Today we're talking about the San Francisco 49ers and their offseason review. Subscribe if you're new, let's hop into it. So we are going to start off by talking about some of their statistics from last season. In terms of points per game, they were 14th with 22.9. They were also 14th in touchdowns per game. Red zone scoring percentage was about middle of the pack. They were solid on third down. They also ranked 4th in yards per game. Rushing the football, even without Christian McCaffrey there, this was still a top 10 rushing offense. And passing the football was a little bit inconsistent, but it was also pretty solid. Defensively speaking, they gave up 25.6 points per game, which was the 29th worst in the league. 7th in yards per game, allowed 317.4. 2.9 allowed touchdowns per game. They were bad in the red zone, bad on third down, bad on fourth down. They were a little bit below average against the run, especially against opponent rushing touchdowns per game. 1.4, 124.6 opponent rushing yards a game. And against the pass, they were actually not too bad. There's a lot to go over when you talk about the 2024 season for the Niners. I think the biggest thing we have to talk about is the fact that like 90% of their players dealt with injuries. It was so rough that at certain points of the season, this team just looked completely different from their 2023 version. So it was kind of unfair to a lot of the players. And when your bell cow offensive playmaker and Christian McCaffrey was out for basically the entire season, it really did kind of put a damper on what their season could have been. I'll also say their defensive coordinator got fired this offseason, and you bring in Robert Saleh, which that is a massive upgrade because that defense had no right to be as bad as it was last year. That defense is way too talented. And I honestly think that even though their offseason they did lose a bunch of guys, which we'll talk about here in a second, I don't really feel like they did a really terrible job of navigating the offseason. So the moral of this video is that I don't think the San Francisco 49ers are completely screwed. Let's go and talk about their free agency. This does not list everyone they lost, but it does tell you about who they released and traded and signed. In terms of some signings, Luke Farrell, 3 years, $20 million deal. Demarcus Robinson's 2-year, 9.5. Mac Jones on a short 2-year deal. Long snapper, some cornerback depth, Luke Gifford, Richie Grant, Jason Pinnock, just some young guys here to give you some depth. Now, admittedly speaking, this Luke Farrell deal is a little bit crazy to me, but I don't know, maybe you could see him in some 12 personnel packages. Kyle Juszczyk was released, then re-signed to a 2-year, $8 million deal. Really nice contract for such a special player. Kevin Givens, you re-signed. Curtis Robinson, Ben Barch. You traded Deebo Samuel. You also traded Jordan Mason. And you also released a handful of players. In free agency, you also lost Travarius Ward, Dre Greenlaw, Talanoa Hufanga, a number of other players. So yeah, it was an offseason where you lost a lot of key pieces. And don't get me wrong, I do think that they will feel the effects of losing some of those guys. But at the same time, this Niners team, in my opinion, should be looking towards the next chapter of their roster. And I don't know if you can seriously trust a linebacker who's coming off a torn Achilles, even if you love the guy in Dre Greenlaw. Talanoa Hufanga has also dealt with a ton of injuries and hasn't quite looked the same since, when he was really showing off a few years ago. Travarius Ward was kind of inevitably going to leave. That was something that was kind of out of San Francisco's hands with the situation he was dealing with. So frankly, even though it does suck that you lost those players, I don't necessarily think it's the end of the world. Now, I do think it does kind of limit this team. Like, if they were able to bring those guys back, then cool, maybe you're right back into the Super Bowl conversation. But without those guys, I do feel like maybe you're a step down from where you were. So that does suck, and of course losing guys like Deebo on the offense, Jordan Mason too, which I kind of found a bit bizarre. I would have liked to have seen them keep him because he showed some glimpses last year. You also, I think, lost Aaron Banks too. So yeah, you lose a lot of pieces, but I don't know. I just don't think that those guys were, long-term answers for this team. Like Deebo was probably going to get off the roster at some point soon. Aaron Banks got a huge contract that I'm kind of happy San Francisco didn't match. Dre Greenlaw, I just, as much as I would love to have seen him back with Fred Warner, he got a nice contract. When you're coming off a torn Achilles, I can't have so much faith in you. Talanoa Hufanga has consistently been injured, so that was fine. Granted, I would have liked to have seen him come back, but it's fine. Travarius Ward, we just talked about. I also don't really blame them because he didn't play particularly great last year. So, I don't know. San Francisco, to me, they lost a lot of pieces, but I don't think it's the end of the world. Like, I think people genuinely believe that this Niners team is just going to go from being 2023 championship contenders to having a super injury-riddled season where you have, like, the worst defensive coordinator in the NFL, and now you've kind of gotten healthy, got an awesome defensive coordinator, and all of a sudden they're supposed to be like a 7-win team. Like, no, this is going to be a playoff contender next year. But that's just how I felt about their offseason in terms of the free agency portion. It was not the greatest free agency because you did lose a lot of pieces, but frankly, with how their salary cap was, it kind of felt like it was inevitably going to happen. And I think for the most part, you were able to keep the guys that you wanted to keep, aka Fred Warner, George Kittle, Trent Williams, Christian McCaffrey. You bring back Brock Purdy on a nice extension. We didn't talk about the extensions. Brock Purdy, 5-year contract worth a lot of money. Fred Warner also got a 3-year extension, and I think George Kittle also got like a 4-year extension too. The Brock Purdy one, it's a massive contract. Now, it's not like $60 million a year, so fortunately, you don't have to worry about that. And let's be honest, 2 to 3 years down the line, if Brock continues to play at this level, the contract won't necessarily be a bad contract, because by then, you're going to be looking at contracts getting north of $65 to $70 million, and Brock is nowhere close to that. So it could end up being a nice contract down the road. Now, my personal opinion of Brock Purdy is that he is a borderline top 15 quarterback that has some upside of being a top 10 quarterback when he has the right team around him. I don't necessarily think that Brock is somebody that can elevate a roster by himself, but I do think he can be a part of a overall machine that gets the job done. And when you're able to put good pieces around him, like this team has been able to do with Ayuk, Williams, McCaffrey, and Kittle, it really makes his job a lot easier. And all he has to be is just a part of this team rather than being the team. For example, the Bills need Josh Allen to carry them to playoff wins. So do the Ravens. I'm not going to say carry, but they have to be the leading factor to get them to their spot. From Brock Purdy, that isn't usually the case. Now, I do think this season, with some of the talent they lost and some of the question marks this team does have, I do think that Brock has to elevate his game and get this team going in the right direction in terms of he has to be the main reason as to why this offense goes further. But as long as he plays at like a top 10-ish level, I think that's totally fine. And in terms of the contract, yes, it sucks to pay a quarterback that, you used to have to just pay pennies for, but now you have to pay millions for. That does suck, but it's part of the game. At the end of the day, it is so difficult to find, top 20 quarterbacks in the draft, especially when you are a talented team like the San Francisco 49ers that are looking to contend immediately. Like, just ask Kyle Shanahan. He's tried with so many quarterbacks, and of course, the biggest one was Trey Lance. They spent a super high draft pick on just for the last pick of the draft in Brock Purdy to be the way better quarterback. So locking him in long term, I don't necessarily think it was the worst idea in the world. Let's go ahead and talk about the draft now. So in the first round, they took Michael Williams. I don't hate this pick, but I also don't love this pick. For me, Micah Williams to me was not a top 15 overall talent. I thought he was a borderline, back of round 1, early round 2 guy. But because there is a nice package of, potential and raw talent, I definitely could have understand why you would want to take him in round 1. And clearly for Robert Saleh, who loves to take edge rushers, this one actually does make a lot of sense to me, just based off a pure scheme fit and what this team already has in Nick Bosa. Unfortunately for the Niners, they didn't really have no other answers outside of Nick Bosa. You of course had your Yetur Gross-Matos, who you maybe could have some faith in, but outside of him, you're not really trusting Jonathan Garvin, or you're not really trusting Robert Beal, or any of these other guys. So you kind of had to do something there with around Nick Bosa, and decided to get Michael, who I think instantly has a high ceiling in terms of being a good run stuffer. And I think he does have a level of pass rush upside that you feel good about. Now, I don't think he's ever going to be a 10+ sack a season type of a guy. That's just not really what his skill set is right now. But I do think that he has a nice frame. He's strong as hell, long arms. I do think he can lock out and be really awesome against the run. And I think there is something there as a pass rusher. He was dealing with injuries for most of his time last year for Georgia. So even with that said, he still was able to get, I think, 6 sacks last year. So there is some upside for him to be a really nice player, but he just got to stay healthy, and he just needs to find a bit more nuance and whatnot. But playing opposite of Nick Bosa, who can be that 10 to 12 sack a season guy, and then Michael can just be a bit more consistent with being dominant against the run and getting pressure here and there, I think this could end up being a pretty valuable pick. Next in round 2, you took Alfred Collins, the defensive tackle from Texas. Now, if you see over my shoulder here, I got a Texas flag, and Alfred Collins has a bit of a special place in my heart. Alfred, coming out of high school, was a 5-star recruit, and he's one of the few players that I know so much about. But former 5-star recruit, was thought to be the future at the defensive tackle position, and then Tavondre Sweat becomes a monster. Byron Murphy was awesome too, so it kind of took some time for Alfred to really get some legit playing time. And in his last year with Texas, which was I think his senior season, he went out there, and in my opinion, he really did an awesome job last year. He's not the highest upside player, but what I can guarantee you with Alfred is that he's big, he's strong. he's somewhat athletic for his size, and he can just stuff the run quite nicely. He can also get to the quarterback here and there. I wouldn't necessarily say he's a high upside player. Like, this is not going to be a Pro Bowl, all-pro guy, but this is going to be somebody for the next 5 to 6, 7 years. You're going to have this guy stuffing runs up the middle, being an awesome role player on this team, and that's kind of what this Niners team needs. They have so many stars surrounding these guys. It just really needs some role players to get the job done, and I think that's what Alfred Collins is just ultimately going to be. An awesome role player that stuffs the run, occasionally can put some pressure on the quarterback, good locker room guy, and I just think the Niners got a nice pick here. Moving over next to the linebacker from Oklahoma State, Nick Martin. Now, he got injured last year and really took a lot of time off, which was unfortunate. I still think that this is a wild pick in round 3. I had a 5th round grade on him. I know most people had a 5th or 6th round grade. He's athletic. He can move well. He can definitely get to the running back, and he can make some plays, but he's coming off a bad injury. And I don't know. For me, there was just bigger needs on this roster. Like, offensive line was a big time need. Cornerback, another edge, some more help on the defensive line. Nick Martin, to me, while yes, he can maybe replace Dre Greenlaw in the future, I don't think he's quite yet ready for it. He has a lot of work to get it to still work right now. So to me, this one feels like a risky pick that does not have a great chance of hitting. We'll just quickly go over the rest of the picks. Upton Scout, maybe it could be your long-term answer at corner. We'll just have to wait and see. CJ West, I like this pick quite a bit. Very high upside defensive tackle. Jordan Watkins, I don't know about that one. Jordan James, I like this pick. This is a potential replacement for Christian McCaffrey. Marquez Sigel, not sure who he is. Didn't actually watch his film yet. Curtis Rourke from Indiana, maybe a potential upside backup quarterback. Connor Colby, Junior Bergen, that completes their draft. So my general thought process is I don't hate their draft. I don't think it was the greatest draft. I do think you did kind of have a draft where you address some big needs, especially along the defensive line. And frankly, I guess I trust Kyle Shanahan. I also trust Robert Saleh to know what they're doing with the Upton pick and with the Nick Martin pick. So there is a chance that those guys maybe get some playing time this year. We'll just kind of have to wait and see. My general thoughts, not my favorite draft in the world. I think they could have done a better job in terms of addressing some of their issues like the offensive line, as well as potentially the cornerback group and maybe the safeties. But I guess we can just sort of live with it for now. But now let's go ahead and talk about the depth chart for the San Francisco 49ers. We are going to begin with the offensive side of things. As you can see, basically the exact same team as last year, minus Deebo Samuel and Jordan Mason, as well as a different offensive line. For the most part, it's basically the same unit though, and I think this offense is just going to be relying on Brock Purdy staying healthy, playing up to that level, Christian McCaffrey returning back to form, Ayuk staying healthy as well, Trent Williams staying healthy too. This is not a very deep offense. Like, I don't think their offensive line is particularly deep. Yes, you brought in Andre Dillard, who maybe could get some run here and there, but I don't feel great about it. The interior does not have great depth either. The receiving core doesn't have great depth there too. You're probably hoping that Ricky Pearsall can be that third option on this offense, especially in the receiving core, because Juwan Jennings is an awesome second option. Brandon Ayuk, one healthy, looks pretty good, although he really struggled last year, so you're hoping for Ayuk to get back to form. McCaffrey, we'll see what he looks like. That injury he was dealing with last year was not very fun, so you do have Isaac Guerrero as well as Jordan James behind him, so I guess you have some solid depth in the running back room, especially with some young guys. But I don't know. This is an offense that I think is a little bit top heavy with the superstars in McCaffrey, Ayuk, and Kittle, but they're all kind of have a little bit of some question marks with each of them. McCaffrey, the injury history, Trent Williams, the injuries as well. Ayuk is coming off an injury too. So if this offense can stay healthy, I do think with Shanahan running the ship here, this is going to be a unit that could probably be borderline top 15, top 10, especially if Brock Purdy plays up to that contract. But if there are some injuries, I do start to worry about this offense quite a bit. Next on the defensive side of things, I'm not sure if this is their final depth chart, but I'm sure there'll be some changes. Nick Bosa is like their third string here, so that's not going to happen. But you do have Nick Bosa, you do have Michael, Yatur, Kevin, Jordan, Alfred, CJ West. I think CJ West could get some playing time, by the way. You bring in Bryce Huff, who can also be another pass rusher too. Granted, he really struggled last year for Philadelphia. Fred Warner, Nick Martin. You have some other guys in the backfield too, like D. Winters. Cornerbacks, I do believe Malik Mustafa did suffer an injury, so we'll see if he can return back to form, but if he can even play at all this year. But Diamondre Lenore, Renardo Green had a really nice rookie season. Jair Brown, Richie Grant. You do have some depth here in the safeties, so I think you should be fine. Upton Scout, we'll see if he starts or if it will be a Trey Brown or maybe a Siren Neal, or maybe, I don't know, Richie Grant may move down to nickel. Who knows? Maybe Jason Pinnock too. In totality, I think there's a lot to still kind of figure out with this defense. You do have a little bit of some depth here, some different options. I don't think this is going to be a great defense next year. As much as I do love Robert Saleh, and I think he can elevate this team, I don't expect this to be a top 10 defense. I don't expect it to be I don't think it'll be top 15. I think it'll be somewhere between 15 to 20 next year, depending on what their schedule looks like. You, of course, have Nick Bosa. You, of course, have Fred Warner. But there is a lot of questions with this unit in terms of who can be that opposite pass rusher to Nick Bosa. Does the interior of the defensive line seriously get a lot better from last year? Does Nick Martin start for you? Who's there next to Fred Warner? Who's your nickel corner? Is Malik Mustafa going to be able to play? A lot of question marks there. I do like the fact, though, that they went in this offseason of just trying to, turn the chapter. You lose a lot of key pieces like Greenlaw. Like some pieces up the middle, like a safety. You lose those guys, and that sucks. But I do think because they've drafted so well, I think they can kind of withstand some of those issues. And even though 2025 might not be the best defensive season, by 2026 or 7, maybe you can return back to form. Now, the good news for the San Francisco 49ers as we transition over to what does 2025 look like, they have one of the biggest cupcake schedules you'll ever see. Because in week 1, you got Seattle, which is a pretty winnable game. New Orleans, winnable. Arizona, I think they'll be good, but it is winnable for the 49ers. Jacksonville, winnable. LA's a tough one. I think LA wins that. Tampa Bay's a tough one. Tampa Bay could win that. Atlanta, Houston, New York, pretty easy winnable games there. Not going to be easy, but you can win those. LA again, Arizona again, Carolina, Cleveland, Tennessee, that's 3 straight. They should blow them out. We'll see what Indy looks like this year, but that's a winnable. Chicago might be cooking. We'll see. And then Seattle to end the season off. Let's just be honest. This is a pretty damn easy schedule. I'm just looking at it. Their toughest matchups are the 2 matchups versus LA. And sure, maybe Arizona's good next year, but I don't know if they'll be that good to where they'll be a super competitive team with San Francisco. But I think that those are games that could be kind of tough. Houston will be tough. Tampa Bay will be tough. Chicago might be tough. But, you got a lot of bad teams on the schedule. So for San Francisco, there's kind of 2 ways you can look at this. There's either the way of looking at this and saying, oh yeah, we're going to win 10 plus games and at least have a shot in the playoffs, which that's all you can ask for. Or you could say, we're going to breeze through the schedule and be very untested heading into the playoffs. I'm usually somebody that likes to see a schedule of kind of a mixture of really tough matchups, but also a couple easy gimme games. But this is unfortunately a season where you really only have 2 tough matchups versus LA. And outside of that, unless some of these teams really shock people, this is going to be a pretty easy schedule for this team. So I don't think they're going to be battle tested much at all, especially when you look past week 10 when they have that matchup versus LA. It's Arizona, Carolina, Cleveland, Tennessee, Indy, Chicago, and Seattle. Maybe Arizona and Chicago can put some battles up, but nobody really there is too intimidating. Seattle will be tough, but Seattle, I'm not too worried about. So I don't know. The schedule, you could look at it 2 ways. You could be either very excited because this Niners team is probably going to win a lot of regular season games, or you could say, we're not really going to know what this Niners team looks like until we actually get to the playoffs, which is sort of bizarre to say. So in terms of what their ceiling might be, I think this is a team that could probably win 12 to 13 games just because of how easy the schedule is. I think their floor is probably a 9-win team with, again, how easy the schedule is. And, Kyle Shanahan's a good coach. Worst case scenario is you deal with some injuries again, which I think would suck, but there's still enough talent to get you some wins against this really easy schedule. Best case scenario, Brock Purdy cooks. You can stay healthy. The defense returns back to form with Robert Saleh. And this team is right back in the conversation to maybe make a deep playoff run. I will say, I don't think San Francisco is the title contender that they used to be right now. I think they need another 2 to 3 years of retooling. But I think this is a nice team that can, with an easy schedule, can be competitive, can win some playoff games. And, this is one of those teams that has a potent enough offense when they're clicking that nobody wants to face this team come playoff time. So just in general, I think we should all just not press the panic button on San Francisco, at least for this season. Still a very talented team that dealt with a ton of injuries last year. And with this schedule, with how easy it is, you're going to see this team win a lot of games next year, primarily because of the schedule, but also because they have a great coaching staff and their roster's still pretty darn good, granted with a lot of question marks. But you guys let me know in the comment section below. You look at the schedule, how many games are the Niners winning next year, and are you panicking or are you calm about 2025? Let me know down below, and I love you guys. Peace.